First one in. What's going on, guys? How do you say your name? Kentucky Crows? Nice. Welcome everyone. We will be looking at the chart of BTC for a good portion of this first part of the live stream, of course. I'm going to walk through a few different scenarios, some things I'm going to be looking out for. As I often say, it's always good to have, 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways this can play out. Because at the end of the day, anybody tells you 100% they know what's going to happen. Let's be honest, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, when, and how. I mean, that's just the way it works. And that's not what trading is about. Technical analysis is not about predicting the future. It's about looking at, precedent. What are the probabilities and the odds of something that will happen? And, very often it seems like you can predict, and that's just because you're looking at, hey, well, more often than not, when this happens, that happens type of scenarios. But at the end of the day, when it comes to trading, you make your plans, but then at the end of the day, you react to price action and how the market responds. So that's what I'm going to be looking at here. We'll be giving it a minute here. Let me post this link and we will get to it here. But finally seeing a little bit of red, a little bit of breathing in the charts here. The alts have pulled back some as well the last couple of days, so it was due. The question now is, is this a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a breather? Do we buy the dips again, as always, or is this a, hey, time to step aside for a little bit longer and let this one pull back? So that's what I'm going to be looking at here. Tezos, yeah, the Tezos shills, the Tron shilling. Oh, the Tron shilling just amazes me to know. And just, it's like the new XRP bot army. It's hilarious, but we'll look at that here. All right, so let me do this real quick, and we will get going. Thank you for the likes already. Thank you for the thumbs up. And as always, drop any charts that you want to look at, any names, and we'll certainly make some time for all of that good stuff. So welcome. For many of you are relatively new to the Node Insiders group, thank you for subscribing and for joining us. You guys should have all gotten invite links to the Slack group. If you subscribed and you haven't, shoot me an email and we will absolutely get you on board. So, all right. So let's do this here. Melissa in the house. Welcome, Melissa. And she has her own YouTube channel, by the way, guys, or ladies. I don't know if it's so much for the guys, right? All right. Let's see here. So I'm going to start with just a quick overview here, taking a look at the market metrics. How are things shaping up? Of course, it's moved into the caution. It was strong yesterday. It was a quick move down. That flipped the 4-hour bot strategy to flat. So that one is now officially flat. The daily is still strong, remaining long. Has been long for some time. Went flat and then back long again a few days later. So daily has been predominantly long here for most of January and basically all of February. Does it finally change course? Now this one moves a little bit slower and kind of just lets the trend ride as long as possible. So of course it never gets out at the exact top, never gets out in at the exact bottom. But hey Herman, welcome. But yeah, that one's still long. We'll see how that one plays out. I did note that a few days ago, these overbought indicators were really spiking here. It's come down a little bit, but it was way up there. So, it's just one of those, be cautious. On the alt front, however, things, there's always something moving. There's a few names that we'll look at here that are showing some good relative strength. But it's kind of a mixed bag right now. A lot of smaller cap names hitting the forefront again. All the Bitcoin forks were in vogue this weekend. Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Private. They were just all running. So we'll look at those. But I generally don't do a whole lot of like Bitcoin Gold and all that good stuff. But hey, you miss on some of those. Hey, Melissa, you should do a crypto one. I'd watch it. All right, so let's do this here. Let's start with the BTC. What is going on here? I'm going to look at a few different scenarios as far as how this can play out. Primarily, let me look at the higher time frames first, and then we'll zoom in here a little bit for some more kind of short-term tactical approaches if you want to look at that here. But let me take these moving averages. Oh, actually, I'll leave that on. So first off, right, what's the broader trend, right? It's always good to kind of get some perspective. You see a red spike to the downside, and it's like, okay, is this the beginning of the end, the turning of the trend, or is this just another pullback along the way? And we've seen these moves, right, where you had a big reversal there, you had a big reversal there, but since the start of the year, since 2020 for the most part, the moving averages have continued to trend higher. All pullbacks have been supported and found a higher high, higher low. And so, you know, at this point, the trend technically, especially on the daily chart, is still very much moving upward. The trend is your friend, higher highs, higher lows. That has not changed yet. And even with today's near-term selling, I mean, it's way too early to say, oh, the trend changed. And generally, it's kind of 2020 retrospect anyway, right? You look back and say, okay, that was the top. And so that's why I tend to look at the lower time frames, get a little bit of a closer look, especially if you're doing something with margin and all that. You got to play it much tighter, right? For more position type holds, then yeah, you might want to zoom out and ignore some of the noise. But this is what we're looking at here. Looking at here, what I was wanting to point out. So this is the trend. It's moving higher. Of course, there was the big break above 10K. In a little bit of a, you know, clearing some resistance as well, psychological number, you know, all the party memes and tweets were going out this weekend, and it was good. I mean, of course, we all wanted to see price go higher. I figured, you know, there was a good chance we'd see a pop over 10K. Now the question is, what happens, right? Couldn't hold. Is this just a quick profit-taking move, and then we're going to see some pullback, and then finally a good push over 10K? But if we look at the last time price broke 10K, right, this was back in October of last year. You know, this move just looks a lot stronger, a lot more sustainable. The last move was kind of a out of nowhere. Prices were looking like they're about to roll over, and in fact, they did. They broke support, had a big shakeout, and then it was just this insane short squeeze that pushed price up 40% in no time. And then it just couldn't hold it, of course, and rolled back over, made new lows. This move does look a lot stronger, right? You've seen just kind of a steady, gradual climb, and that's very good to see. Even if it doesn't hold 10K right away, it doesn't feel so, you know, parabolic as this last move we saw in October. And so from that perspective, even if it pulls back, you know, you can see a higher low, the base is being formed. That's all really good. And so, you know, whether it's above or below 10K, it's kind of a who cares at this point, right? It's a psychological number. It gets a lot of attention and all that good stuff. But the broader trend, the momentum, still favors the bulls for now. What I want to point out here is what are some support levels to be watching if price does decide to continue to pull back a little bit. And so first would be clearly the moving averages, right? You've got the 10 EMA sitting here around that 9,700 almost. And then the 22 EMA on the daily just around 93. And so you expect these continue to go this way, right? Those are kind of your first two levels to be watching. And really that little zone around those moving averages is what I would be watching there. And so it lines up pretty good with this prior, let me use this one here, this prior breakout point. And what we've seen lately is those prior breakout points end up being the new support level, prior resistance, new support. And so that first level is around 9,500. So the zone between 93 and 96 is what I'm watching for that first near-term support if price continues to pull back. That's this little area here. And that would just be the near-term trend support, right? That'd be the moving averages. That'd be using some horizontal price levels, you know, and just looking at that, right? That's the first near-term level. So depending on how tight you're playing it, if you wanted to give it more room, you know, if it starts to really lose this level, the selling volume kicks in at that point, you may want to take a little bit of a tighter stance. Just to be clear, where do I stand personally? I was looking at the shorter time frames yesterday, my last night before I was going to call it a day. And for the most part, I didn't trade that day anyway. I was just, you know, it was kind of my day off. But later in my evening, I started to notice this slight divergence kicking in. At the time, we hadn't quite broken down, but it was looking a little double toppy. And I said, you know, it's like late my night. I don't want to wait until Monday morning. Could be one of those red mornings. could just spike higher. And my decision was whichever way it plays out, I don't really care. I'm going to just get out of the way, start locking in some gains. So what I did is I raised some cash, and then I just put a really tight stop, which of course got taken out with this dip. And so I'm on the sidelines right now. I'm completely on the sidelines, close out the alts, close out the BTC. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to just jump right back in today if the price action calls for that. But just so you guys know where I'm coming from at this point, just taking a breather. I figured I'd let this one play out. And so that's what I ended up doing. And of course, I mean, it wasn't a massive drop on the daily, but certainly on the shorter time frames, it was like, wow, here's the red spike. And it just kind of felt like it was due, right? It was kind of due for a little bit of that, which is why I decided to go that direction. But could just jump right back in here today. We'll see how it looks after the end of this stream. So the next scenario to watch here is a potential rising wedge, right? Now it's a little bit of a stretch, I'll admit, but if this one plays out, how does it look and how did the rising wedges play out? So let me do this, and it's not exact here, okay? So just bear with me, but assuming this was the top of the wedge and it's going to turn here, whoops, if I can grab my, there we go. There we go. So this is how I'd be looking at that, right? Something like this. And so if it was a rising wedge here, then what I'd be looking for is, you know, again, the first levels that I pointed out here, this near-term support, and then down here would be your next level of support. That's just clear horizontal price support, right? There's nothing fancy there going on, no indicators, just looking at where were the prior bases, what were the breakout points. Those would be your next kind of near-term support. But what I like to do with these is use some fib retracements. You can also do measured moves on falling wedges, which I'll cover here in a minute, but I also like to use the fib levels. Those just tend to make more sense for me. And so what I want to do here is look for a potential pause. If it does break, it hasn't broken the wedge, by the way, it's still in the trend line, but if it does, then first level, that 382 level, is around 8,900, 9K, right? So that'd be a really kind of your first watch point. Then below that, somewhere between the 50% and the 618 here, right? So that's what I'd be looking at on that perspective there. So that'd be a pretty minor pullback, to be honest. I know it'd freak some people out if we saw 8Ks again, but in the big scheme of things, really not that big of a pullback, especially on the weekly chart. It would just set up for a nice higher low and really set some things up going into the halving. So those would be the pullback levels to be watching there. And again, that's kind of after it breaks this trend line. First levels would be watching would be the moving averages that I pointed out on the daily, and then these horizontal price levels. So that's what I'm watching there. Alternatively, you can do a measured move, which they're a little bit trickier to do. I'm not a big fan of measured moves with wedges. I do use them for like ascending triangles and all that stuff. But you know, if you do a measured move on a wedge, you've got to start with, you know, one of the swing highs and take it to one of the lows. So you can do that. Some people say you use the width of the wedge there. But you know, if we did something like that, where does it take us here? Let me start with this one here. Sorry. Extrapolate that out from the trend line, right? That would assume if it actually broke. And that's interesting to see that this one projects down to around 618, which is a pretty steep drop, right? I mean, $8,100 from this point to be a $2,000 drop from the top. But that's what I'd be looking at. So that also lines up with a fib retracement level. So that's kind of the bear case scenario, if you will, right? If this is a rising wedge that's about to break, then the trend will change on the daily chart, and you'd see a couple of weeks of kind of chop sideways down and looking for those levels on the downside. However, the bull case scenario would be, this is just another pause along the way, the trend will continue higher, and what you want to see is something like this or this play out. That'd be the bull flag scenario, right? So that's kind of scenario number one, where you get one of these little bull flag type of things, or some bigger action, choppy action, but what it does is sets up a kind of ascending triangle base. The most bullish scenario, in my opinion, would be an ascending triangle base, right? If you started seeing like a big drop here this week, then a rally almost to the highs, then another drop with a higher low, then a rally that started to really tighten up, then that would be the strongest scenario, because that would set up for a really big move over 10-2, and in that case, you'd get a pretty powerful break to the upside. And so that's what I'd be looking for. But of course, that would take some time to play out, right? Maybe a couple of weeks, maybe even a month or so. But that would be very positive. You just kind of saw this sideways action. The other thing would be a cup and handle, right? Some sideways action, rally right back up to the highs. People say, oh no, double top. It pulls back, very shallow, and then you get the breakout, cup and handle kind of confirmed there. So that'd be that scenario there. And then the third, which would be a little bit more neutral, would be some sort of symmetrical pattern, right? Where it's almost like this ascending triangle, but it's a little bit more symmetrical looking, where the highs and the lows really start to coil up. And then at that point, it's more of a neutral scenario where it could shake out either way. It could break higher, it could break lower. And, you know, the momentum would favor the bulls in this scenario. So ideally, you'd be looking for a bull break, but that'd be a little bit more neutral of a pattern. Right, so there's a lot of ways this could play out. I guess if you're looking at a bearish scenario, you can also say, what if it forms a big like head and shoulder pattern here? But that's not really playing out at this moment, so I'll just leave that one on the table for now, and we'll just focus on those. So, you know, there's just a couple of different ways. But going out, looking at the weekly chart here, I mean, just very positive action here near term. It does need a breather on the weekly. I'd like to see a higher low form on the weekly, like I said, and that would really play out. I was really hoping for more of a dip back here, because then that would have formed a really nice like head and shoulder pattern. Didn't quite see that. We continued higher, which, you know, I'm not going to complain, but that would have been pretty cool to see that play out, and then a big breakout going into the halving. But for now, looking for that higher low on the weekly chart here. Near term stuff. So let's zoom in here. Near term action. I'm going to go to the 4-hour chart. Let's drop the moving averages back on. Here we go. And so looking at the shorter term action, of course, the volume here is pretty negative. If you look at the volume there, there's quite the spike down on volume here. These last two candles saw some pretty good action, and the fact that the highest volume on this recent move showed that candle closed near the lows was selling, right? When you saw this big wick and it got bought back up, that was a lot of people jumping back in, but this one here is starting to end at the lows. And if you go to the 1-hour chart, you know, just kind of sitting sideways here, going, you know, kind of indeterminate, but breaking below 9,800, you'd probably see that next leg down. So I'm just cautious. I'm going to sit tight, let this one play out here for at least a day, see how it goes. But some of the alts are still holding up, sitting tight. So that's, I think, where we can see some opportunity here in the next, you know, in the coming week here, if it continues to rally here. But all in all, a little bit of a breather day. Again, the bot is starting to confirm a little bit of flat here, some caution, but we've seen this here in the past with those recent dips, which were all just bought up. Do we see that happen again? It's looking like it's due. I mean, going back to that daily chart, if we look at the RSI and the MACD, you know, again, they weren't extreme, but for BTC, when the daily starts to poke, you know, over the 75 level, that's considered a little bit extreme for Bitcoin. Alts, not so much. They can go way higher, but Bitcoin, you know, it's pretty rare. I mean, it's happened a few times, but it's not very common where you see it sustain at those levels, right? We saw it last year a few times where it was way up there in the 90s, and those, you know, tended to mark some near-term pause, some near-term top, but for the most part, I mean, if you look at most of last year, rarely did it get this high, so it's good that it's still living in the bull zone, still holding above that 40 mark, trading near these upper levels. It just kind of shows the broader relative strength that we're seeing in the price of Bitcoin and most of the cryptos in general. So good stuff all around. So going, I don't know if we want to look at the shorter term time frames. I mean, on the 1-hour chart, there was a slight divergence yesterday, not a huge one, but it was kind of there. And, you know, maybe forming a little double top-ish, but you can see what happened as soon as price broke below that level. There was a kind of a, I'm guessing it was the stops were triggered, the panic selling set in, you saw that kind of quick spike, but then we bounced right back to it. But you're still below these moving averages on the 1-hour time frame. They're starting to trend lower here. The 10 has crossed below the 22 EMA on the 1-hour, and so for now, very near-term action is flashing caution. Some selling pressure is starting to show up here. Is it profit taking? I would guess it's a little bit of profit taking. I mean, we got to put it in perspective. The price of Bitcoin in just this year alone at the peak was up about 47%. That's a significant move for Bitcoin. And so it's not without its pullbacks along the way. And that's ideal, right? We don't want this parabolic straight up move from here. We want this guy to just grind higher, climb the wall of worry, as they like to say, because what tends to happen is by the time people say, oh my God, this thing's about to take off, price is way higher, and then you get that big climactic parabolic move from a much higher price, and that's, that'd be better, right? So that's what I'm looking for here. Let me catch up on some of these comments here. I've been rambling here for a little while. If you're just joining us, I'm just kind of covering the BTC chart for now, some scenarios that I'm watching. I know 10K was kind of that, oh, couldn't hold 10K, it's up, it's down. I think that's just, it's certainly a highly watched number, but again, it's just kind of a psychological round number when you think about it. There's not any real big exact key levels around it here recently, so just kind of watching the broader trend for now. Let me see here. Okay. If you had 100 BTC, would you sell at 25 to 30 at 10K? If you had 100 BTC, you shouldn't need to ask us for that kind of advice. You must be doing pretty well. Let's see here. Look at June 18 of 2019. Yeah, maybe. The grind higher always seems normal. I like the grind higher. XRP. So we'll look at those. I'm going to definitely cover the bigger cap names. All right. Cool. All right. I think I've caught up on most of that. Let's do this here. XTZ will never go down again. I know, right? Man, some strong names. So looking at the trending list here, what's strong right now? Tezos, of course, is on top of the list. Waves has been there. The Bitcoin forks are on here. Aeon, ARC. Lisk was on a tear. I've completely missed Lisk. I don't know what it was. I kept seeing it pop up on the list here, and it was just one of those like, oh, Lisk, next name. Oh, Lisk, next name. And it just, man, you look back 2 weeks later, and it's like, holy smokes, what a move. It must be my ARC bias, because I don't tend to trade ARC a whole lot, and maybe that's what it was. Golem, Bitcoin. All right, let's look at a few of these here. I'm going to start with some of the bigger cap names, and then we'll take a look at those here as well. I'm going to look at ETH, because that's been a nice tear. Litecoin. What are the other ones? The Bitcoin forks. We'll look at Bitcoin Cash. Let's throw Ethereum Classic on there, because that one's sitting tight here near the top. And then we'll look at a few of those names that you guys want to look at. Yeah, there's some gap filling that's going on there. The CME gap, as a lot of people like to point out. Honestly, and if you can totally disagree with me, and I would understand that, but honestly, I don't care a whole lot about the CME gaps. And most of you guys, I mean, a lot of you guys know that. That's just not something I put a lot of weight in. I know that it does tend to fill those gaps very often, but I'm not going to put a lot of my trading probability on some of the gap filling. I mean, that's just me personally. I know CME plays a part, but when you look at the global volumes of crypto exchanges, right, and we're talking like Binance and Coinbase, and a lot of the cash exchanges, and even like the derivative exchanges like BitMEX and those guys. I mean, they're all open 24/7, so that weekend gap doesn't really exist there like it does on CME and some of the other markets where there's that pause over the weekend. So that's why I, at this point, don't put a whole lot of weight on it. Now, if those other exchanges start to gain more traction and more significance, might be something worth noting. But for me, it's just not a thing that I really put a lot of weight in. But I know a lot of people follow that. You see it online a lot. I see it on Twitter and people talking about the gap. Just, everyone has their own way of looking at things. That's cool. All right, let's look at some of the big cap names here. ETH BTC here. What's going on with the Ethereum? It was on a nice tear. Did pause here a little bit over the weekend. It was due. I mean, Bitcoin had, you know, not a ton of a pause, but, you know, Bitcoin had some resurgence versus some of these alts. Once it broke over 10K, that was kind of expected, right? You had these alts just on a tear. Bitcoin was kind of just sitting tight for the latter half of last week. But then I was thinking once we start to break over 10K, people may start rushing back into Bitcoin and seeing a little bit of a pause. But definitely watching this one here because ETH has been a nice one. It's been finally playing some catch up. If you go to this daily chart, you know, it's right at this neckline from this double bottom on the weekly chart. It's had a big move from this double bottom on the daily chart, right? Remember we saw this double bottom forming back in here, and it had that breakout. Then it just sat tight for a while right above this resistance, and once it broke out last week, I mean, boom, straight up to that next resistance level. Very good action. I'd like to see this pause and then finally push here. So definitely one to watch. That weekly chart just looks really good. You've seen this big reversal pattern forming on the weekly. Finally, ETH could be playing some major catch up versus Bitcoin. So going back to that 4-hour view, you know, this is interesting here. Do we get that kind of ABC style pullback? That's what I'd be looking for here. Maybe one of those type of things that form a little bit of a bull flag on the daily chart. And then from there, can it start to break trend and go higher? If it starts to close above, call it 2,300, 22.8, then that might not be a bad place to look at it for some continuation here. With, you know, the way I would trade it would be my stop would basically be this swing low. But ideally, I'd like to see this low taken out, make a little bit of a lower low, and then get going here. That'd make for a little bit of a stronger shakeout. But ETH is definitely worth watching here. It's been doing really relatively well here as of late. The USD side, again, was getting up there. If you look at the RSI, I mean, it was up over 80s. And, you know, just getting a little extended near term, came up to the next major target in and around here. Good stuff around 230s. And if you look left, that was also that prior support back here. So all in all, ran right to the major target. Very good. Got extended. Went a little higher than I expected. Honestly, I was thinking 220 or so, but I mean 220, 230 at that point. What's the difference, right? But looking good. Still trending higher. Looking for a potential pullback to the moving averages if it does drop. So I want to see it hold 190. If it starts to pull back, I don't want to see it get much below 190. That's also this prior resistance level, prior base back here. So somewhere in here, if it can consolidate between this 230 and 190 level and form a little bit of a setup, that'd be a good place to watch it. ETH, XRP. Yeah, we will look at Tezos. XRP is interesting here. So I had that big pop. And XRP is always one of those names where, like, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Every time, at least recently, every time it's had those spikes, it's kind of like, is this the real one? Now, we had a good one at the end of last year, right? That was that nice little rally. But you still get these quick spikes. But that being said, you know, this is forming a big reversal pattern here. Started in December and is still kind of being formed. We had that big spike. And now, this is an interesting place to look at it. It's pulled right back to the breakout point. It's still above the 22 EMA. It's had several days of pause versus Bitcoin. So this is one I'm watching here for the week as a potential breakout. Not breakout, but a follow-through candidate, right? This is kind of could be a good throwback entry, and maybe it's ready to see another leg higher. With the way Bitcoin's looking right now, personally, I'd probably be looking at everything with a much tighter stop, or, you know, going to play things tighter. But if it did something like that, you're looking, you know, that's not a whole lot, maybe an 8 to 10% versus BTC, but I think it would take out the highs at that point and make a new relative high. How's it look on USD side? You know, USD side, it's kind of pulling in again, was getting a little overheated along with Bitcoin and the rest of the market here. I'm still thinking the next major target is around that 32-cent mark. Didn't quite get there, got to 29 cents. See if we can pause and then keep going on the way up there. I'm looking more at what are the names versus Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin continues to hold up or go sideways, then I'm still interested in what are those alts that are going to outperform Bitcoin on the way up. And if this is a bull market, then that's how we should be looking at things with that perspective, especially right now with things moving highly correlated. That's good, right? Bitcoin's going up, alts are going up faster. All is well. That's what we want to see. Litecoin. Man, Litecoin. Didn't Litecoin, let me see here. I had another chart with Litecoin. Here we go. So the final, not the final, but I had two targets lined out, that $65 mark and then 77, 76. And that was, if you look left, go to July of last year, then August, then September, right? This was just an inflection point, which is why I marked it out on the chart. And it's always interesting to see when price runs right to those points and then kind of takes a little breather. We'll see if that turns out to be a turning point, but it certainly hit the target near term on the upside with the USD price. Now we want to see this kind of settle out a little bit here. How does it look versus BTC? Bitcoin. That was also a little bit of a resistance level here, Litecoin versus Bitcoin. And, it just has been a little bit choppy here over the last week or so versus Bitcoin. So it's certainly given it some pause, some breathing room. As long as it holds up above this level, I think it's definitely worth watching. It looks like it wants to break out versus Bitcoin, but I think it needs a little bit of a pause. So holding above, maybe not even that much, maybe call it 7,000 sat, at most 68.8, but certainly a breakout candidate. And again, in general, and I mentioned this last week, even if we see some pullback near term, the bigger picture perspective, the weekly charts, I'm still very bullish on the alts because, they've just had such a big downdraft versus Bitcoin here over the last year and a half. And many of them have been putting in this big reversal pattern. And I'm thinking that, going further into 2020, we're going to see a lot of these alts much higher versus Bitcoin. Not all of them, but especially the majors, I think, will be a good play. And we're already seeing a lot of that, right? A lot of them have had some pretty good moves here just in the last month and a half. And so I think even after a pause, we'll continue to see that versus Bitcoin. So, still bullish on the alts longer term. BCH. Let's go here. Bitcoin Cash. So we had that nice little break. It's interesting. Look at this. We had a measured move on this ascending triangle base, which almost got there. It wicked it twice. And then it's kind of just been sitting there tight. But that was really like a 2-candle move anyway. It did it really fast, and it has just been going sideways and choppy since then. But still can't complain, honestly. This one's still holding up relatively well. Let me clear out some of these lines. Versus Bitcoin, I think it's a good breakout candidate here. It's trying to clear some resistance. You're seeing some volume coming in, some wicks being formed. Very clear support level being formed now. So just kind of range bound. I think it's definitely worth watching here versus BTC. I'm going to put that one on the list here because it's not a bad setup. Where's the next big resistance here? Let me find it on Coinbase just because they've got the history there. Go to daily charts. Yeah, so you've got some room to run before kind of the next major levels. I think that would be a one to watch. And then this here. And if you want to talk about gap filling, this one did fill the gap, but this was because across the board, when they did that fork, everything stopped on Bitcoin Cash. You remember last, at the end of 2018. And that one did fill the gap, but that one made sense because there literally was no trading here during the Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV fork. But looking on the upside, I think if this one has room to run still, if it continues to break out here versus Bitcoin, then I'm looking at around 5,200, 5,300, and then closer to 6,400 on the next one, or 0.064, if you want to call it that. So nice. Ethereum Classic. Looking at the ETC there, going to the 4-hour chart. This one's interesting here. It's starting to, I thought this one was way overdue and had topped, but it just continues to defy sellers and forming a little bit of an ascending triangle here on this broader chart. So the lower trend line is definitely one to watch now. If we look here at this little swing high on January 21st, you go left, that'd be my max stop, right? If I was trading an ascending triangle on this guy, generally what I like to do is get in when they start to bounce off the lower trend line as opposed to waiting for the breakout. I will add on the breakout just because that's a powerful pattern, but an initial position here near the trend line is usually not a bad risk reward entry, but I'd play it tight just because it could very quickly look toppy if it breaks below that level there. And so that's how I'd be looking at that. So I'd be looking at max. I'd probably give it 8 or 9% to the downside from here. Call it 1,000, 1,100 sats, right? If it breaks below that, probably not too positive. And then it doesn't have to get much higher to give you that 2 to 1, 3 to 1. But interesting to see that big pattern potentially forming. If you go to the daily, I mean, the RSI was way up there, has had plenty of time to cool off now. It's still holding up at the 22 EMA, but again, it's right there. So if it's going to bounce, this is where it wants to bounce, because otherwise, then it would likely be a quick move down if it finally does crack. So interesting. Decision time for ETH, or Ethereum Classic, not ETH. All right. Let me see here. I'm going to take some of these notes here and add some names to my list. Gas. Okay. I have gas and EO. I'll have to look at that. XLM. Beam. Is Beam back on the move? We will look at Tezos. That one is next on the list. All right, cool. Engine. Mana. Did you guys see Mana this weekend? Man, Mana went crazy this weekend. Okay. Let's look at Tezos. XTZ. I missed this one. I was watching. I don't do a whole lot of trading over the weekend, but man, this was a nice little setup here. It was just sitting tight right below this 2,300 level. Had rallied right up to it, just pausing. You can see there was this little ascending kind of base forming right there as well. And just had a nice little breakout. Let me clear these other lines because this is distracting, I'm sure. But that was a nice little secondary move getting set up here. It was just kind of looking like you're ready to go, and didn't do anything with it just because I tend to be less aggressive, less active on the weekends just because I want to kind of regroup for the next coming week. But man, what a move that was. That was a nice breakout. How did that go? A quick 17, 18%. Not too shabby here. Had that breakout candle, and then look at it, give you about 2 candles of pause and then get going again. So definitely a nice setup there. Very strong move on Tezos. If you go to the daily chart, I think that took out the highs. Yeah, that took out the old highs here. So good stuff. And look at the way this one played out. It had that strong move rally, and it came right back to the little double top bottom that was formed in December. And it kind of just took a breather there. In fact, had a little shakeout, fake out, and then boom, when it finally broke above that, quick spike higher, cleared the prior highs. And there's really no resistance on this guy here. So it's got room to run. This is looking quite positive here. How's it look on the Kraken exchange? Because I believe they've got more history here. So this is Tezos XBT on Kraken. And if you look left there, you know, you're basically right at these highs here. And so, yeah, above this level, there literally is no resistance. So it's just kind of, you know, you can do like measured moves with Fibonacci extensions. You can do different ways, but more often than not, once you're in new high territory, it just really comes down to price action and maybe divergences and that sort of thing. There's really no way to exact move a target on the upside. But man, good stuff. If you've been on this one, congrats. How's it look on the USD side? Going. Man, that XTZ USD pair got pretty extended here. RSI was hitting 90, 96 on the daily, and looking like it's finally due for a breather, but still trending. The trend is your friend. There's no signals just yet. There's this big volume here, reversal, some signs maybe of distribution with the volume coming in, but you know, you still got. It depends on how tight you're playing it, but this is kind of your max support there. Where's that on the daily? Well, that's only the 10 EMA on the daily, so man, it could pull right back to that and be just fine. But if it did retrace that much, depending on how volume looked, then I'd probably be looking for a little bit more of a pause, maybe down to there, 180s, 190s. Then that would set up for a better break, but strong, very strong. Is that a cup and handle? I'm thinking you're talking the long-term chart. This guy here. You know, yeah, I mean, you could argue that it's there, right? By definition, you've got the, you've got the high, and you've got the other lip there. The handle never broke below the 50% mark, so I guess you could argue that. But the one thing with cup and handle, it's generally a continuation move. It's how I like to play it. I mean, you can see cup and handles at the lows, but the stronger cup and handles are kind of continuation moves where you've had a rally, like this, and then it finally has a breather, and then it looks like, oh, maybe it's going to double top, and then it goes like that, and then it just takes off, right? That's the ideal cup and handle. But at the end of the day, it's the same scenario, right? Because you just got resistance, and you have a level that's being taken out, and there's really no more sellers at that point. So it's kind of the same psychology. That's really what forms a cup and handle. Is you have that first run, you have the pullback, and then you have a second run, then you have some profit taking going into that, and then you get the pullback, and everybody thinks, oh, this could be it, double top, but then it doesn't sell, just forms a light volume handle, and when it breaks out, then people rush right back in, right? That's just the psychology of the traders behind that, right? In theory. Beam. What's going on with Beam here? Somebody said Beam. Beam. This is the Beam daily chart. It's been a little choppy here as of late, but it's starting to take out some levels. First, look at this, is interesting here. Had this level back in here, took it out, pulled back, give you a little bit of a throwback, but it's trying to get going again. Anything closing on the daily basis over this, 860 to 870 would be ideal, but you got your next level here. Above that, you've got a lot of room to run. So if it gets over this 900 sat level, which is pretty close to, you can see a quick 12-15% move on that guy. And I don't know anything about Beam, so I'm gonna have to look into Beam, see what's going on with this project. But yeah, pretty cool. Mana, let's go look at Mana. The Decentraland token finally pausing, pulling back here. Did hit the target over the weekend. Major targets here, so let me zoom out and go left here. Had a very strong move off the lows. Once it broke above this, this little downtrend pullback, found some support back in here around 370 sats, quickly spiked up to the prior highs, which is back here near 500, and then it got real choppy. It was tough to hold that bad boy right in there, just because it was like quick spike up, quick spike down, back up. But when it finally got going here this week, very fast move up. Next target was 600 and then 660, 670. And it had a quick spike up. On the USD side, my ultimate target was like 6.5 cents. And it hit that and quickly pulled back here. So very nice move. I think there's going to be a lot more attention into the Decentraland token and the platform and all that. They go live, I believe, next week is a public launch. So this would be an interesting pullback to be watching. Where I'd like to see it hold now on the downside is above that 500 sat. That was some resistance for quite some time here near term. Now that it's above it, I want to see it hold. That would also get it back to the daily 10 EMA. Certainly got extended here in the near term. Just when you see those crazy moves, it's anyone's guess how high they go, but definitely extended. Not a FOMO move to chase. Ideally, you just want to wait for the pause or the pullback. And this is finally the pullback, right? So I'd be watching this. You're getting a pullback to the 22 EMA here on the 4-hour. If it breaks below that, then holding above this 500 level would be key. I'd be looking at a potential secondary entry at that point. And that's what I'm going to be watching here. So, and then of course it could just break above that, breaking back over that 650 level, 670. Then I think it's got room to run on that daily chart. Just needs to reset a little bit, but next target up, it's going to be around 800 and then 940. So, man, could have quite the move here. If we go to Mana USD, and I'm going to go, let me just do this guy here. So if you look at the resistance back here, right, 6.5 cents. Now those are the other targets. The first target was below that. I think it was 4.5. I said then 5, then 6.5. Hit that 6.5 target there. Very nice move, pulling right back. The 10 EMA is down here near 5 cents. So between 5 cents and 4.5 would be your ideal place on the USD side to look at it. So in and around that range right there, and then maybe setting up. That's if it pulls back that deeply. Again, there's two ways that I like to see these pullbacks play out, either price or time. By that I mean, price is like giving it back. Time is, it just needs to consolidate the move and go do some sideways type action there, right? And of course, the better scenario would be the second, where you just go sideways, consolidate the move, versus the sharp pullback down. But you know, these smaller cap names tend to have the sharp pullback down. They're just so volatile. But you know, keep in mind the weekly chart. I mean, if you zoom out, this guy, you know, has got a long ways to go before it's anywhere near the old highs. And if it does get there, I mean, you're talking about a tremendous move. Let me take the log off because that's kind of throwing some of these spikes off. But I mean, you're talking about 5 to 6 cents here. The next major swing high is around 10 cents, 10 to 11 cents. And then above that, 14 or 15 cents, right? And so that's a double even from here. So that's, you know, that's the potential there. That's a massive move for something like that. But it's anyone's guess. I mean, I know there's a lot of different scenarios here, but I'm watching it. Definitely a project I'm liking anyway, just from a project perspective. I think it's pretty cool what they're doing. And this setup was just really nice here on the USD side. Once it cracked over that 3.5 cent mark, you can see it was just a very quick move up, or not 3.5, basically 4 cent mark. That was just a quick move up after that. So looking for some pullbacks on that bad boy there. We'll see if we get it. Let's see here. Walton, yeah, let's do Lisk, because that name has just gone crazy, surprised me, and I got none of that. Walton coin, I think that double bottom played out on Walton coin. BNB, let's do the BNB. And Stellar Lumens. Okay, so next on the list, we've got a request for gas and Stellar, and then Engine. And then I'll go through those names that I just mentioned here. So let's do those kind of quick. XLM, Stellar, BTC here. Ooh, it's not a bad little setup here on this daily chart. This one does look cup and handle-ish. So you've got, you know, you got this first swing high, you've got the pullback, you get another almost perfectly level swing high, and it's just kind of taking a pause. Volume is coming down here a little bit on these last couple of days, and as long as it holds up, you know, above this point here, in and around there, then yeah, this is definitely one to watch. How does it look on the 4-hour charts? If I see a power pivot on this one, I'd be interested. You know, if I see like a big volume push over this downtrend, then I'd be watching it. Alternatively, if it has that kind of quick spike to this point and then bounces back very strongly, then that's a great place to watch it too. Just because at that point you have a line in the sand, right? That would be my stop if I did that. But yeah, no, it's a good one. Definitely worth watching there. It's a nice little setup here in the near term. Looks like it is a good breakout candidate. Definitely setting up for a push higher. If it does push higher, then, you know, there's a couple ways. You could do a measured move first from the depth of the cup to the handle and see where it breaks out. Let's see how that looks. And then we'll do some other levels. Let me extrapolate that. It's not a bad little move there. And then if you look left, you know, you've got some levels here. You've probably got this guy here, and this guy here. So, you know, 770, 800 would be your first target. From here up there, that's, you know, 10, 15%, not too shabby, but could keep going after that. Not a bad little setup there. I will definitely keep an eye on that one this week. I think today, tomorrow, ideally would be, if it's going to move from this pattern, you want to see it happen soon. Cool. All right. What were the other ones on the list? Gas. So a couple of ways to do this here. The gas Neo pair, I'm assuming that's on KuCoin or something, right? Because I know they have Neo base coins. Let me see here. Gas. Now this one, I mean, this one's tough because it always kind of has its own mind. So wiki. But man, you got a similar scenario playing out here too. On this 4-hour view at least, right? You've got this run up. You've got a little bit of a pause. Oops, not that guy. This guy. Right. Little resistance there, lower cup. You could see a little bit of a pause here, then that push higher. Or you could see a double top. That's how they play out. The double tops is cup and handle, double top, one or the other. But yeah. So I wouldn't want to see this one get below, call it 1475 or so. Much below that, then it starts to look double topish. If it holds and makes a higher low on that point, then you're looking at an ascending base. Then that looks better, but interesting. Gas is just not one I tend to. I don't think I have the Neo gas pair on here. It's probably a KuCoin. Let's go look at Neo. Interesting. I think you could do your own gas Neo pair. Let me try something here. Gas Bitcoin. Oops. Gas BTC. Neo BTC. And there you go. There's your gas Neo pair. That's what I did. I just divided the gas Neo pair by the Neo BTC pair, and BTC neutralizes. Remember? Basic math and divide by cross out, and you do all that fun stuff. Oh man, my engineering days. But yeah, there you go. Looks like this is a key level there. All right. Next on the list here is Engine. I'm gonna throw the log back on here. Doesn't do a whole lot for Engine, but wow, Engine. Engine. This is a tough one, man. It's just so volatile here. After that big move up, it's just really shaky. Would be an ideal candidate for like that, you know, kind of ABC style correction. You've already had it. Now it's down to bounce back. So you've had that high, low, higher high, or lower high, lower low. Now it's bouncing. If that hit, let me see, I'm guessing that hit the 10 EMA. Actually, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. So it's had that pullback, and let me zoom in here for you guys. And it landed, that second low landed just above the 22 EMA on the daily. It's right back above the 10. That's good. And it also, you know, kind of held this support level here. So yeah, I think if you like it, if you wanted ENJ, this wouldn't be a bad place to take a look at it. And the way I would do this one, if this was a trade of mine, you know, this is kind of the buy range now that it's back above this very near-term level here. Let me highlight that for you guys because this one's pretty wicky. It's kind of hard to see, but you know, it's kind of back above this. You can almost say, hey, this is like a little inverse head and shoulder here on this 4-hour, starting to get back above it. And so I would generally play it relatively tight, but if it were me, you know, I probably wouldn't give it much below that right shoulder, which would be about a 7%er to the downside. If I gave it more, max, I'd give it 1205, right? That'd be the low there, but that's 11%. So in and around there, and then you'd be looking for a retest of this high. That would be almost a 3-to-1 ratio just there. That's about an 18% move if it can retest the highs. Even if it made a lower high and formed a double top, for me, right, that would be worth the trade just there, just because that's almost a 3-to-1. So that's not a bad risk reward. If you gave it more, then what that does is it makes your trade not as good, right? Because then it's a less than 2-to-1. So you'd be looking for a 2-to-1 would get you right there, right? So you'd be looking for at least that, you know, to kind of make the risk reward profile, in my opinion, acceptable, right? Everyone has different rules, but for me, 2-to-1 is kind of my minimum. So 2 ways to do that: tighter stop or better entry. But yeah, not a bad one to look at. Certainly the potential is there versus BTC. WTC, is it mooning? I know I had that double bottom already. That double bottom's been playing out very nicely. A few guys on the Slack group got on this one here, so good call on that one. Nice double bottom there. You had that there, that there. Rallied right up. Look at the way this one played out. Let me clear this here. It rallied right up to the neckline. Then it gave you a quick shakeout, almost back to the daily 10 EMA. That was a good secondary entry point, and then boom, off to the races. Went high, another secondary pullback after the breakout point, right back to the neckline, and then boom, off to the races again. So it's giving you some opportunities to jump on board, but that's a nice little double bottom breakout, and it's kind of just tearing away. Next level up here, you're looking at between here and here as your target zone, And so far the momentum looks like it wants to get there. RSI has a little room to run, so it could certainly get there. But yeah, nice one. Nice one if you've been on the Walton. And again, if you look at the big picture, right, it's always interesting. We zoom in and we see these moves and we're like, whoa, even Lisk, which we'll look at here in a minute. But if you zoom out and you're like, oh, like this is the blip at the beginning of a move. Like this is potentially the start of a big reversal because these weekly charts are brutal. Speaking of which, let's go look at Lisk, right? Lisk has been on a tear lately, but again, if you really zoom out and you look at the weekly chart, you're like, oh, okay. It's had a tremendous run, but in the big scheme of things, like this is kind of move one on a bigger potential move here. So going to that daily chart, Lisk, I mean, it went parabolic. There's no other way to say that, right? It's just, look at the way this curve goes, like just straight up the last 2 days. Big wick at the high, a lot of volume. You know, if I wasn't in this move, this is probably not where I would chase it. At this point, I'd be looking for a pause, but you know, a lot of volume coming in there, kind of pulling back, but the trend is your friend. So far, these moving averages have held. You had that last big base right here, broke out above that with some really good volume, and that gave you the next leg up. So even if you caught it late, that would have been your next move up. And man, even from that point up, quick 85%. Wow, what a move. How did I not see that one? That's great. Yeah, and again, this was one of those names. I think it's my confirmation bias or something, but I was just seeing it on the list and going, oh, cool, Lisk is trending again. Write it off. I hope some of you guys jumped on that list because that's been quite the move there. Let me see here. What else is on this list here? We've got Walton, Binance Coin. All right. I know Melissa asked for Binance, a few of those for Binance, so let's go look at the Binance. BNB. Now, I got to say, Binance Coin, along with Tron, like, okay, this is me ranting here a little bit. This has nothing to do with trading. But I used to have a lot of respect for CZ. And just lately, he just feels like he's hung out just with Justin too much. And he's just become like this shill, this cheerleader. And I know, I guess nobody else should be as bullish about Binance than CZ, but he's always like just, oh, here's 10K again, and here's, I don't know. You guys know what I'm saying, right? He just, like, some of his tweets are like, I don't know, man. Now, Justin, okay, that's just who he is, man. He's just like shill galore, but I digress. Let's go look at Binance Coin here. Nice little move. I think Binance, the better way I was looking at Binance Coin was actually USD. That's how I was watching that setup there. So, and yeah, just no pause here. I mean, you had a quick move last week. Never broke below the daily 10 EMA or the 4-hour 10 EMA, excuse me. This was really the setup back in here, right? You had this big ascending base. And it was choppy before I finally got going. Let me zoom in here. You know, you had that big ascending base. 1850, 1840 was that breakout level, and it had that breakout and then kind of the throwback. So certainly wasn't easy at the start. It was just kind of all over the place, chop, 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 chop. But it finally got going on that candle, and that was it. That was the move, and from there just kind of never looked back. Straight up, pulled right back to the daily or the 4-hour 10 EMA. A little bit of a bull flag there. Secondary entry, big volume on the next move up. And right now, I don't like to see this. When you see that big red candle there, reversal candle, by definition, that is a reversal candle if you're looking at like at candlestick patterns, especially with the volume there and the RSI being kind of divergent. So best case, I think, would be some sideways action from here, kind of let things cool off. There is a bearish divergence both on the MACD and the RSI as you get this big volume reversal candle. So, you know, a couple of ways to play it. You preempt it, you just get out of the way now, or you tighten the stops. The first stop I would use would be a close below the daily or the 10 EMA on the 4-hour. If it starts to close below that, that starts to confirm potential near-term trend change. So that's what I'd be watching there. But very nice move. Went basically from 18 change to 26. Very nice. Good stuff. Where's the old highs here? Oh, okay, look at that. If it keeps going, then next level up is, you know, probably around that $30 mark. And then the old highs. So there's bonnets. There's the BNB. Let's see here. When there was a request for BitShares. BTS. And I think I got all the other ones here. Okay, so let me look at the list here. Yeah, let's look at EOS, Link, BAT. I was hoping for better things out of BAT. Let's see if it plays out here. Ocean. You know, I noticed Ocean has been in and out of this list for some time now. Is it on here now? It's not. It was. Is it? No. I think it was over the weekend. Let me go look at some of these here. KMD, Komodo, showing up on the trending list here again. KMD. Also, that little inverse head and shoulder never really played out that way, but did finally break that downtrend. Maybe this is finally the move. It's certainly turning the trend now, so that's good. So yeah, I mean, you got that first move. You had a throwback almost perfectly to that trend line. Also, the moving averages getting going now. So if you like KMD, I know some of you guys have asked for this one here recently. This one's certainly looking much better now, turning the trend. First target's here around 907, and then I'd probably be looking at around 1,000 or 1,100 or so as your next target up. And then the swing high, so that's your kind of big target, 1,200. Who else is on that list here? KMD, Aeon. I remember that guy. Was he bouncing? KuCoin shares. Golem. The Bitcoin Forks. Neblio. Still on there. Still going. Neblio. There's a name from yesteryear. Let's see what Neblio's doing. Neblio had that move last week. Kind of just retraced right back to the moving averages. Nice little throwback. We'll see if it gets going. Those micro cap names are just really tough. So I mean, they move on hardly any volume sometimes. Pivx, Ontology, Nano, EOS, BAT. Let's go see those guys. Man, EOS is still looking good. It almost looks like it wants to have that kind of parabolic end of move, right? That really starting to gain some momentum. Look at how that guy's going. And EOS, I think EOS might be the winner this week. EOS is looking really nice, really gaining momentum, and it's not uncommon to see those moves that look like this just kind of finish with that like Lisk style move where it's like, and then you get that big spike up. EOS is looking nice. Let's see here. Where's the next level? You're kind of at this. You know, there's really not a lot of resistance now. I mean, you have this little level here, which really wasn't that much. It's right there now. Above that, then you're talking 5,700. So that'd be your next level to watch on the way up. And then after that, you've got quite a ways to go. So yeah, EOS continues to look good. See if it can hold up. And then on the downside again, I'd be watching this trend because you know it's RSI is getting up there. Trend is your friend, but you know these trend lines, these moving averages, I mean, are certainly following the trend. So that's kind of your first stop on the downside. EOS USD looking real similar again. RSI is up there though, so I would like to see a little bit of a breather here. But you know, above this point, this was your last resistance back here in July of last year. Above here, then you're talking 550, 560 is your next target. So very nice. Has had a great move. BAT, the basic attention. BAT's still a good candidate, good breakout candidate. I thought it was going to break out last week. Was looking ready to go. Has had a pullback, but definitely not one to write off. I think this is a nice little setup here. Starts to close above. Call it, to be exact, on the daily chart, 27 and change. If it starts to close above 27.50 or so. That probably confirms it, and more often than not, you might get that big volume push that finally just takes out that level. And then I'd be looking at the next kind of big target is 3,200. BAT, gonna have to keep an eye on BAT too. BAT's looking good, especially you tend to have those rotation weeks where those names that haven't really participated in the last few days or the last week, you kind of get that, okay, profit taken, let's move into something else. BAT could be one of those names. So definitely one to watch here. How's it looking dollar-wise? It is right at this point here. It's a tough call on the USD side. Still trending higher, but it has gone kind of sideways for the last 3 or 4 days. RSI is not really extended, so I'd be watching the BTC pair more. I think that's the way to go. That's a good breakout candidate. Who else is on the list? Oh, Link. Chainlink. I still like Chainlink. I still like it here. Again, on the ascending triangle setups, right? These little dips are always nice. On the short term, it broke out already, so it kind of gave you that near-term breakout. So that was back here a few days ago. Good stuff. Still going. I think it's still a great candidate to watch. In the big picture, the bigger picture, the weekly chart just looks really bullish. So as long as it holds up the lower trend line, then just, you know, the dips continue to be bought up. I think Link is fine there. Link USD. Nice little breakout above that $2.95, $3 mark. So any pullbacks into $3 should be the place where you want to see it hold. Right? If it pulls back, it might not be a bad secondary entry place because you don't want to see it get much below that. So it would offer a relatively tight stop. And that would also line up with the daily moving averages. So Link, not too bad. Not too shabby. All right, let me see here. 0x is one I wanted to look at. I posted the chart yesterday in the Slack channel. Still another good candidate, just like BAT. You know, I thought last week would have been the week, but still kind of pausing. But definitely not one to write off. It's had this low, it's breaking the trend line. It's getting a little choppy here, but once it starts to get over that 2,900 level, I think it could get going. So 0x, BAT, Link. I think I'm going to keep an eye on those guys this week here. VeChain USD could be a good secondary throwback here. So you've had this rally, nice little bounce off that lower trend line, ascending base, cleared right through it, pulling right back. That's where you want to see it hold in and around here. You don't want to see it get much below that. So I'd be watching that. Let me go to the daily here. That's also the daily 22 EMA. So call it, you know, 6,100 or so as your support zone. Looks good. Definitely looks good. I like it when all these charts look pretty decent, but again, breaking below that, things start to look negative, so I'd be watching that. And then on the upside, you know, this little double top that we saw back in December, November, December, that'd be your first target. Adam, I don't know if Adam's ready yet. I was thinking it might have been. Let me clear all these. These are my my notes from the bot signals. It's been going flat, short, so it's getting choppy here, and I'm thinking that could be a good thing because it's trying to turn the trend finally after this little bit of a downtrend it's been in. You can almost argue, I mean, this is not a real clean chart. It's kind of all over the place. You had this big spike higher, definitely made a higher low. I'd be watching more of this trend line down here and using this most recent swing low as a really tight stop. That'd be how I'd be watching it. Otherwise, if it does break below, then maybe a kind of a double bottom scenario on the daily chart. But it is trying to turn the corner here, so definitely one to watch. If it starts to live above this level here, right, basically 48.50, that's positive. So what's the bot status saying on this guy here? The bot status, by the way, I need to add some names. I want to add 3 names to this, so it's rounded out to 20. And I want to keep those, like, those 3 names as the rotation names. I'm going to always keep the top tier names here, but I want to have 3 names or so that we rotate and maybe once a month change it. So I'm open to suggestions. Just no, like, real micro cap names. But right now I've got, you know, Cardano, Atom, BAT, BCH, BNB, Dash, EOS, ETH, IOTA, Link, Litecoin, Neo, Tron, Lumens, Monero, Ripple, Tezos. So Atom here, still flat, kind of reading caution here. At least it's not short. Let me do this here. Let me sort these guys. by rating and then by name. So the stronger ones here, BNB, Monero, Tezos. We did not look at Monero. Let's go look at the XMR. Still going. Monero's been charging nicely, very quietly too. Just kind of very nice, quiet, steady uptrend. Look at this. Higher highs, higher lows, just kind of keep going. Good stuff. MCO, yeah, that's an interesting one too. I'm going to take a look at that guy. That one's... Monero's looking good there, so just still going. How's it look on Monero XMR USD? Good little breakout over that $71 mark. Good stuff. Very nice. Very, very nice. And on the bullish camp, BAT. Huh? Look at that. The bot status is saying BAT BTC. We'll see if that one plays out. Bitcoin Cash, we saw that. That one's looking pretty good too. Bitcoin Cash, if you're joining late. Dash, we haven't looked at Dash. EOS still strong. Link, long on daily, flat on the 4-hour. Interesting there. Neo. And again, those are versus BTC, not USD. It's just looking for those names that are showing some relative strength versus Bitcoin. Neo. Glad to see Neo held this support. Maybe it's finally going. It's been kind of sideways for quite some time, since December, but maybe it's finally going. At least it's held up versus Bitcoin on the USD side. So, you know, it's certainly participated in the run. It just hasn't really outperformed Bitcoin, but can't complain either because Bitcoin's been strong. So at least it's held up. Let's see here. Who's weak? IOTA. IOTA. Whoops. Pulling back for the last week or so. But this would be ideal place for it to bounce in and around there. Right at the moving averages. We want to see it hold above that, call it 3,000 level on the BTC pair, at least on a closing basis. So see if it can finally break this trend. That's probably how I'd be looking at that, is a break of the trend first. Oops. IOTA. Look for a break of the trend here. Decision time. Somebody mentioned power earlier in the, I think it was Leo in the Slack group. I'm going to zoom out here because you got to look at the big picture. Power, I mean, just massive base here going sideways. Maybe it's finally due. Maybe it's finally ready. This is a small cap too, right? Micro cap. I don't even know what the market cap on this guy is anymore these days, but you know, definitely worth watching here. You've got this, let me drop it here, near term break here, which is good, and certainly have a trend line starting to form, higher highs and higher lows. Moving averages are starting to tick higher, so yeah, interesting. Power. All right, let's see here. What's going on? The alerts. What's moving? What's oversold? Let me see if there's anything oversold. Game. SNX. Oh my God, SNX. Remember, SNX was never going down ever again. Lumiere, Modella, Loyalty. Oh man, names I don't really care for. Power pivots. Let's look at the power pivots. Algo. Okay. Aunt, 5 hours ago. Algo. Algorand continuing to march higher. Very nice. Ontology. I think we looked at this one. Nice little power pivot there as it breaks out. Good stuff. Look at that. The volume certainly came in. Good stuff. Good stuff. What's on the move here this morning? What's on the move? BNB. We saw that. Pearl. There's a name from yesteryear. BCH. KuCoin shares. Monero. Waves. Did we look at Waves? No, Waves has been moving this week. Waves. Yes, it's on the move. Nice. Perlin. Nice. All right. Good stuff. Lots of stuff going on here. Even with Bitcoin kind of just sitting tight, sideways, choppy. Lots of good stuff in the alt land still. But it's always going to be interesting to see how this guy plays out. If you missed the beginning of the stream, I laid out a few different scenarios for how I'm going to be watching Bitcoin. The bear case scenarios are, you know, you've got this rising wedge potentially forming. You're still within the lower trend line, so it hasn't officially broken yet. But if it does break, what are the levels to be watching? I'd be watching some fib retracement levels, potentially moving averages on the daily chart. And then, of course, your kind of basic horizontal price points, right? You've got, you know, 9,000, you've got 93, 95, and then back in here, right, if it really gets going, but I doubt it, but who knows. And then, of course, the bull camp scenario is it just takes a breather, does another sideways move, sets up for another run over 10-2, and in the meantime, the alts just continue to play rotation and have parties along the way. So that's the bull case, which, you know, as I said at the beginning of the stream, full disclosure, I am on the sidelines at the moment, have cleared, have raised some cash, but I'm going to be looking at some of those alts that we covered here because some of those still look pretty interesting. So see where Bitcoin lands here today. Some of the names to be watching here. XRP, interesting, only because it's a potential throwback, right? So it's had this pullback right to support. Got to watch it here. XRP is one of those names I don't front run. I generally will tend to wait for the actual break and confirmation, but that's definitely one to watch. Let me go down the list here. BCH sitting tight versus Bitcoin. We'll see if it can finally break out of range there. One to watch. XLM. I think this one looks better than XRP personally, so I like this one. A little cup and handle type of form in there. Engine, potential pullback level, finally breaking higher. A lot choppier of a name. That's much tougher to trade there. Mana had a good run already, so I'd be watching more for a pause, pullback, see where this one lands. Anywhere between here and the 500 sat level is where I want to see it hold. EOS, one of the stronger names here, could have that big push, the big climax push here this week. We'll see. I like Link. Link is still looking good. More macro style though. The bigger picture here looks really good. Link. BATS near term potential breakout candidate on BTC. Definitely one to watch here. See if we can break out. And there we go. The lines moved. And 0x was another one that I'm going to be watching here. So if you missed it, those are the names, the short list, if you will. We reviewed quite a bit though. Good names being thrown out there. Pink coin. Interesting. Don't know anything about pink coin. Monaco. Yeah. Monaco. Wow, nice. After that big pause, finally getting going again. Very nice. What was the other one? Oh, Wanchain. Somebody asked for Wanchain. We never looked at that guy. Wanchain. Now this one had that run along with Aeon and Icon. And yeah, maybe it's done. If you go to the 4-hour chart, a little bit more clear. You know, you've had that kind of that push lower, right? Finally starting to trend again, made a higher low. So yeah, wouldn't be against it. If it pulls over, if it breaks over this level, that's confirmation here. And on the downside, I mean, at the most, you've got a clear stop. At this point, you want to see this low hold, which is around, what is that, 27.40? And on the upside, 3,100, looks good. So yeah, Wanchain might finally be ready to go. Another leg. Aeon along those lines. I saw it on the trending list here today. Did finally break. Is it a lower high? Interesting. Could be worth a shot. Icon also interesting there. So some potential setups there. See if we can take out those trend lines there. Look at real decision time for Icon here. Got a little bit of a support zone. Really sitting tight now. And that happens to be right at the daily 10 EMA. So could be a good little bounce trade. Yeah, it's all right. Atom, did we cover Atom? I believe we did. We looked at Atom. We looked at Tezos, another strong name. I didn't put it on the short list, but definitely, definitely strong now that it's cleared resistance. And I believe we looked at VeChain. We didn't look at ARC or Cardano. Let me do those quickly. Then I'm going to switch over to the stock side real quick, take a look at some of those. It's probably not a whole lot, but we'll look at those. And go from there. What was I going to look at? ARK. ADA. ADA and ARK. All right. Oh, and we looked at Ethereum Classic too. I'd put that on the short list. Looks like it's about to break out there. So, ARK, you know, that nice little double bottom has played out so far. Still going. Still going along with Lisk. This is just a tough name for me personally. Just too wide and loose. I mean, look at these candles. It's insane how wide and loose these candles are. Look at that. Plus or minus 20% on any given day. I mean, I guess if you're quick. The problem with ARK is the lack of liquidity and volume. It just makes it tough to seamlessly move in and out of those moves, which is why you get those big wicks. But bigger picture, I mean, let me go back to that one. You know, if you think this is reversing, this is probably more of a kind of hold name, right? Or could have a big move if you're willing to be patient. ADA. ADA, which, by the way, if you're not familiar, ADA comes from Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace, who's that? Look it up. I like it. All right, I mean, this one just continues to play out. Good little breakout there. Pause, and this one's good. It's been one of the leaders here as of late. I definitely would be keeping an eye on this downtrend here today, see if it can form a little bit of a handle. But yeah, definitely a good one here. I'd like to see this one pull back a little further, maybe back into this range. Be a good secondary pullback. Set up for another leg higher. ADA USD. ADA USD definitely has had some divergence showing up here. This momentum starting to slow down here. And probably just confirming what we're starting to see in some of these other alts, right? We've seen some of the other alts take a breather here. Names like ETH, maybe potentially pop in here today. Actually, I forgot to put this on the short list because it had that nice little pop here. So definitely watch ETH for a secondary leg. It is extended on the USD side, so I'd like to see more pause. I think it's going to need more time, but who knows, right? If Bitcoin holds up, this one can just start running again. Looking at some of the other names, Tesla, we all knew it was coming, right? I mean, they had that big climactic move. I think I posted a tweet that day saying, I think this is the day. Of course, it's been pulled back. It was a great trade. I mean, Tesla last week was probably my best stock week because of Tesla. Good stuff there, but it had, you know, and it was long and short, right? And Tesla's a tough one to trade, but this was a good long and short name. When it finally broke last week, it kind of undercut 700. It was due for a good bounce. I mean, it hit 800 again here today, pulling back. I think it needs a breather, but it could do one of these, right? These Beyond. Do you guys remember Beyond Meat? You know, it kind of had that big parabolic push last year when it debuted, and everyone's going, "This is nuts!" And it finally went up to like 230. Finally topped. I don't think Tesla's going to pull back that far, but you know, finally getting going again. Definitely needs time. When it's like it was all the rage that day, it was on every channel, every tweet. But look, it's still above the daily moving averages there. Amazon, you know, it's only trading at $2,100. Nice little breakout on earnings, still going higher. There was some news about them not getting the contract from the Pentagon, blah, blah, blah. Market doesn't seem to really care right now, still going. Microsoft, another $1 trillion name, still going. Apple, a little choppy here. Coronavirus, not really causing that much issue yet, but it is getting choppy as of now. Spies. Let me zoom out here. Market's still near the old all-time highs, so has been resilient. I still think the market tops in 2020, but I think it's going to be more tied around elections. Okay, my friends. We did Litecoin and we did VeChain at the start. Oh, I'm sorry, BTS we did not. We did not. I always miss a few, and if I did, I apologize, guys. Nothing personal. I'm trying to read the comments and talk and chart at the same time, and inevitably I miss some. Yeah, nice little secondary move on this guy here. Had that big pop higher, pulling back. And you know, this is a name from, you know, back in the day with Steam and all those, and I'm like, what is driving this here? And I don't know, but big move here, holding the 10 EMA on that 4-hour on the daily. If you go to the 4-hour, you can see that was probably the trend line to be watching, that break there, and just kind of sitting tight now, could get going again. So not bad at all. On the daily, or not the daily, the USD side, excuse me, looks like it might want to finally clear this, what is that, 0.038. Okay, guys. Yeah, Litecoin. I think Litecoin's going to follow BTC, whichever way it ends up going. I mean, it hit the target on most of these, on the USD and the BTC pair. It's just been going sideways. So definitely a breakout candidate to watch, but there's a clear support level being set up here. And, you know, on the upside, if it can break out a range, 7,800 really closing above that would be considered a breakout. Maybe a rotation name, yeah. Nice little range that it's building there, but I think it's going to follow Bitcoin a little bit more. And right now, I'm a little bit more cautious on Bitcoin and just going to sit tight on this one. We'll see how it acts going into this lower trend line and kind of into that 9K range, or 9,500 range, if it gets there. Okay. It is oversold near term, so maybe we get a pop. On the upside, first resistance is going to be basically 10K, you know, 1050. And then, of course, the weekend high around 10.2. But, you know, big picture, I think the market is looking really good. It's been a great start to 2020. It's had a healthy move. Got a little euphoric here over the weekend, but hey, that's expected when we have such a nice move. Ultimately, I think the halving will be very bullish for the markets. I think alts will continue to do well in 2020. And eventually, maybe not this year, maybe next, who knows when, but eventually I believe Bitcoin will make new all-time highs over the 20K mark. Just a matter of when. How much patience is it going to take? But good stuff, guys. Appreciate all the comments. Good thoughts here. And it's really nice to see the kind of the increased activity in the chat rooms as well as online and the Twitter sphere and all that good stuff. So stay with it, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a great